terms of the sector itself, it's going through its challenges. Funding is one. There's a lot more competition as well. You've got awarding organisations looking at their identity. You've got independent training providers, learning providers, who with the swift of change of funding, and the funding pot is getting smaller and smaller. You've got a lot of awarding organisations looking completely in terms of commercial, some commercial, more and more commercial, more international elements of it, and those sort of changes. So in a nutshell, in terms of some of the challenges within I'll call it the further education, the independent learning provider or independent space, as well as the awarding organisation space, in a nutshell, what are some of the conversations that if you and I weren't doing this podcast and we're having a dinner table conversation and you were having your palate and I was having my Balti dish, what would we be discussing?
And I'd be having my chicken chips.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, what would we be discussing?
Right. I'll have your naan bread. I like naan bread.
Okay, you love naan bread.
That's right. Funding has to be there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think the thing that concerns me more than funding has ever been ever thus. I think it's critical right now. I think it is, particularly critical and challenging in the sector, be it independent providers or colleges, being able to attract the right workforce and have the right level of resources. Funding will obviously be there. I think the thing that concerns me more than anything is we've got policy is driven by program changes. So, for instance, T-levels or apprenticeships or whatever it might be. It's driven by a whole range of project initiatives. IoTs, important though they are. Yeah. Some great initiatives. So colleges and providers are running after pots of money because they need the pots of money because of the crisis in funding. But we're focused on lots of initiatives and we're not mainstreaming any of those and putting those into the rate that inevitably then has an impact. And government policy is focused around, as I say, those programs, rather than looking at system changes, that is actually focused on what do we want out of the system. The A-level conversation that came out last week from Rishi Sunak. Yeah. Should we be looking at it? Well, possibly. But it then engenders a conversation about do we need GCSEs as well. But nobody talked about GCSEs last week. It's prerequisited on because it's in isolation. What about all those learners that don't get their requisite GCSEs that go into colleges or apprenticeships or whatever it might be? And therefore, I think we need policy that steps back and looks at the system and enables independent providers and colleges and all the rest of it, the flotilla of boats and ships that actually can make the difference and freed up within a system that is funded appropriately to enable those providers and colleges meet the needs of the learners and the employers for which they serve.
Canny Conversation Podcast Series 5 by Safaraz Ali.